Peace be unto you, my Christian friends, through our Lord and Savior Jesus. Amen. Picking up off the text of Peter asking Jesus how much I should forgive my brother, we're going to talk a little bit about forgiveness today and how you and I can fully and completely forgive. Old Joe was dying, and for years he had had odds with his friend Bill, formerly his best friend till that episode. So wanting to straighten things out, he sent word for Bill to come and see him. When Bill arrived, Joe explained that he was afraid to go into eternity with such bad feelings between them. Reluctantly, Joe apologized for all he had said and done, and also forgave Bill for his offenses. Great. Everything seemed to be fine until Bill turned to leave. And as Bill walked out the door, Joe called out after him and said, "Remember, if I get better, all this doesn't count."
Oh, nice.
Okay. Yeah. We call that, what, Indian givers, right? I don't know how that started, but anyway. In our text, Peter wanted Jesus to tell him how often he had to forgive his brothers. Bottom line, Peter wanted an out when forgiveness didn't count. So he suggested he forgive his brother 7 times and then cut him off. Right? That's the out Peter wanted. You said, nope, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. Okay, you math whizzes, how often is that? Exactly, 490 times. Now, the problem with counting to 490 times is you're going to lose count through the mess, right? And that's precisely Jesus' point. Don't count how often you forgive. Why? Because forgiveness is unlimited. But doesn't Jesus know how hard that is? I mean, it's easy for us to say unlimited forgiveness, right? Right. Much more hard to practice, is it not? Jesus knows how hard it is. No question about it. Remember, in his own life, how difficult it was for him as he hung on that cross to forgive those who were taunting him, crucifying him, making fun of him, laughing at him, calling, "Hey, if you're the Christ, come down from the cross." Father, forgive them. Remember how difficult it was for him to forgive everyone who had betrayed him? I'm not talking just Judas or Peter, but all the disciples, his closest friends. Where were they in Jesus' greatest need? They weren't there. So remember? Remember? See, Jesus taught unlimited forgiveness. He practiced unlimited forgiveness. And I think he taught us 3 critical things about forgiveness that we're going to identify here today. First, Jesus taught us that unlimited forgiveness is possible. I know it seems unrealistic. I know it seems impossible. But Jesus says, oh no, it is possible. Some of you might remember the godly woman by the name of Corrie ten Boom. She died back in the middle 60s. She herself had gone through the Nazi takeover in Germany and had spent a number of months in a prison camp herself. She was taunted by a wrong that had been done to her. While she had forgiven the wrong, to be sure, she could not keep from rehashing it. Finally, she cried out to God for help. And in answer to Corrie's prayer, God sent her a kindly Lutheran pastor to whom Corrie confessed her rehashing of this event and as a result her inability to sleep and rest. The pastor told her a story about his church bell in the church steeple. It says the bell is rung by his deacon pulling on the rope, right? But once he lets go, the bell keeps swinging. slowly and slower for sure, until finally the last gong sounds, and then it's silent. When we forgive, the pastor said, we first take our hands off the rope. But if the wrong was especially hurtful, the pastor continued, don't be surprised if the old angry thoughts keep coming back for a while. They're just the ding-dongs of the old bell slowing down in your life and mine. Corey writes later, so it proved to be. There were a few more midnight reverberations of that old bell, but I had taken my hand off the rope, and eventually the bell went completely quiet. Forgiveness isn't something we do for others. Oh, that's true. We do it for others. But that's not the primary reason we forgive. We do it so that we can get well and move on. Maybe there is an incident from your past. Some hurt, some slight done to you, that is still reverberating in your heart and mind. Ask God to help you take your hand off the rope that tolls that bell, so that peace can come to your life. C.S. Lewis held a teacher that he hated. So when he became a Christian, he knew he had to forgive that teacher, but he just couldn't do it. I mean, this guy was nasty. Okay? Finally, he resolved to say just the words, I forgive you, every single day, every time that thought or memory came up, whether he felt like it or not. Later, C.S. Lewis wrote, each time I said these words, another stone was removed from my wall of bitterness, until one day I came to realize the wall was no longer there. Don't let the resentment smolder in your life or mine any longer. Jesus says you can let it go. We often talk about forgiving and forgetting. Forgiving is the easy part of that duel. Forgetting is the most difficult part. But it starts with leaving go of the rope that's tolling that bell. And then eventually, as the bell swings a time or two throughout our life, ding dong, eventually that bell will go quiet. The second thing Jesus points out is not only is forgiveness possible, it is extremely beneficial for you and for me. The damage we do to ourselves through unresolved anger and resentment is far more deadly than any damage we inflict on those who hurt us. Did you ever figure that out? Our hating anyone, for whatever reason, is like burning down your house to get rid of some rats. Does that make any sense at all? Isn't there a much more economical way of getting rid of those rodents than destroying your house? One man put it this way: forgiveness is like taking poison and hoping the other guy dies. Yeah. Does that make any sense? Not hardly. E. Stanley Jones, famed preacher, once noted that a rattlesnake can get so angry it'll bite itself. Isn't that crazy? That's exactly what harboring hatred and resentment against others is like for you and for me. It's biting ourselves. We never bite those that cause the pain. The resentment and the anger bites us ourselves. In a study conducted by the University of Michigan and the National Institute for Mental Health, they found that 75% of Americans are rather confident that they have been forgiven by God. But the study flip-flops when that picture looks at how they are forgiving others. Then suddenly the picture is not quite as bright. The study concluded that when people did forgive others, they experienced better health. You see, forgiveness is the key to a healthy mind and a peaceful heart. Forgiveness is the best thing you can do for your body and soul. Yes, it forgives somebody else, but the primary benefit of forgiveness is for you personally. Paul says it this way in Colossians 3. Forgive whatever grievance you may have against one another. And then he adds this conclusion. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. I like this quote. It's not an easy journey to get to the place where you forgive people, but it is such a powerful place because it frees you. The third point that Jesus identifies is that not only is forgiveness possible and healthy, it is essential. Bottom line, we dare not ask God's forgiveness for our sin if we're not willing to forgive others. In fact, in Jesus' prayer, in the Lord's Prayer, we tell God to use the example or how we go about forgiving others as His guideline to forgive us. I always kind of trip over that little line in the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us, O God, as we forgive others. When we say the Lord's Prayer a little later, I'm going to really slow down on that particular line. So get ready. Cautioning Peter to forgive 70 times 7. Jesus follows with a little parable to bring this truth of forgiveness home. He said, a man owed his king 10,000 bags of gold. I do not know why the modern translation did not update the word talent. What is a talent? It's 1,000 pieces of gold. Okay? This is a staggering sum of money. 10,000 talents? Whoa! Today it would be worth roughly $8 trillion. That's a huge amount. To work this off, it has been estimated the man would have to work from sundown to sunset for 164,000 to 274,000, not days, not weeks, not months, but years. How many lifetimes would that have been? And he would have not worked it off. And yet the king, at first, was ready to have the man and his family sold into slavery to satisfy at least a portion of the debt. The man gets down on his knees, begs for more time to repay the debt. Doesn't ask to be forgiven. Doesn't ask to get more time. Just, give me a chance to pay it off. Unbelievably, the king was moved with compassion and completely forgave the man's debt. Phenomenal, isn't it? Such a huge debt. Well, that same man went out and found a fellow worker who owed him a few silver coins. That would be a denarii today. Okay? A couple quarters, maybe a nickel or a dime, but silver coins. And demanded payment immediately. So when the man could not repay this debt, the other man had to throw him into prison until he did so. When the king found out about this, he called the servant in, whom he had forgiven that huge debt. I forgave you that enormous debt, the king said with anger. Shouldn't you have forgiven that tiny debt owed to you? So the answer is, well, yeah. You see, Jesus asked the same question of us today. The debt that I owe God for all of my sins through 64 plus years is got to be a huge pile. Would you agree? And yet the pile of wrongs done to me throughout that 64 plus years is very small. Compare the two piles. The one I owe God is absolutely enormous. And God says, forgiven, wiped clean. And yet the small debt that others have done crap to me, I harbor and are angry and refuse to forgive. Does that make sense? Shouldn't I have forgiven that tiny debt owed to me after what God had forgiven me? That's what Jesus is asking us. See, you and I have been forgiven an enormous debt by God, made possible by Jesus Christ and His cross of Calvary. I mean, I can't even imagine how much that pile looks like. And out of God's amazing grace to us, we too then can find the power to forgive others. You see, forgiveness is essential not only that we may be forgiven, but because forgiveness is the testimony to the faith you and I profess. How many times may my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Asked Peter. Jesus' answer would be, well, just forgive others as often as God has forgiven you. That's simple, isn't it? Forgive others as quickly as you expect God to forgive you. Comments or questions? Please, ma'am.
We had a pastor that came into our office that goes to a Baptist church and said God only forgave him 490 times.
Is that a fact?
I said, then you'd have been dead in 2 days.
Wow. He needs the good news of the gospel, let me tell you.
I figured with Baptists, they would have the good news of the gospel. But he said God only forgives you 490 times.
Wow.
Takes it too literally.
So where is he at in that count? Oh boy, I'm 491. Oh man, I'm really screwed now, you know, right?
I'm just amazed that he thought that.
Wow.
I'm really amazed that that's what his church taught him.
Please go back to that person if you get an opportunity and tell him the last word, one of the last words you spoke from the cross was tetelestai. Okay? We normally translate that as it is finished. But really the Greek word tetelestai is a banking term. Okay? It's used in the banks in Jesus' day when certain debt has been paid in full, and that gets stamped across that debt paid in full. Okay? Jesus says, your debt, my debt, all of our debts, paid in full. 100%. Okay? Other comments or questions? Please, send it.
I don't have anything. I mean, that sounds stupid.
You don't have anything? Well, good.
But, you know, when you're in the back, we really can't hear their questions at all.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to read.
Sometimes
Yeah.
you repeat and sometimes you don't, but
I know.
honest to God, we really don't hear them in the back.
I'm very, very sorry. I try to remember to do that. And please remind me as you've done, so I will.
Are you asking for forgiveness?
I'm asking for forgiveness, yeah. I do that, no question about it.
It's fun.
That's one. Well, I'm way beyond 490, let me tell you. Whoa, I'm way beyond that. But yeah, I try to repeat, but then I always do have to remember to do that.
When some of these people were thrown into prison because they couldn't pay their debt, and they were put there so they can pay their debt, how did they pay their debt when they were in prison?
How did they pay their debt in prison is the question. It was debtor's prison. That is different than, in Jesus' day, than a criminal prison. Okay? Criminal prison, you're paying off the time for your offenses against society. Debtor's prison was a place where you went out every day to work and were paid for that, but the money that you worked for, you didn't get, you went to pay the debt. Okay? So in Jesus' day, there was debtor's prison and there was criminal prison. Okay? Two different places. So good question. Good question. Other comments or questions? Yes?
You know, is that a parable?
That is a parable.
Okay. So
An
that,
illustration, if you will.
because you got to be awful wealthy to lend your servant $8 billion.
Yeah. $8 trillion.
$8 trillion.
$8 trillion.
You got to have some serious jack.
Yeah.
Lend your servant that kind of money.
Yeah. But you know, the likes of, what was the guy's first name? Bernie Mader? I mean, how much money did he take down with him? I don't know if it was 8 trillion or not. Don't get me, I don't know that. But it was an exorbitant amount. And people who lost their life savings and retirement accounts and so forth, that went down to Bernie Madoff, big guy. So to have that big of a debt with your king, there had to be some kind of shenanigans going on behind the scenes that he was continually loaning him more money. 8 trillion? Come on. Like Bernie Madoff, right? There were shenanigans going on. Right? I mean, I would say, loan it with me, and I'll take care of it for you. What do you think? No. Okay. I looked at her and she goes, oh, geez, Other comments or questions?
Hang on one minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
How does one forgive somebody that has sinned against God? Or, I guess the question, it's hard to explain, but you were given something by God. You asked for it, you got it, somebody takes it away. How can you forgive that person for taking something that God has given you?
How do you forgive God or that person who takes away something that God gave you? Well, in my driveway, about 7 years ago, was a full-size van, which I owned. Got up for church on Sunday morning, and guess what? My van was gone. Not even glass broken in my driveway. So I called up the church and said, I need a ride to go to church, I was serving Pilgrim St. Paul in Lakewood at the time. And they all kidded me. Yeah, where did you park your van last night, And I said, come on, how do you forgive? I don't even know who took my van. Right?
Well, that would make it easier.
Yeah, I don't have any resentment against an individual that I know and deal with. But I've had to say, God, forgive that person, and that I have to leave it at that.
What about the person that the wrong was done to?
Yeah, those are a little more difficult because the pain and hurt caused by that person, our normal reaction is not one of forgiveness, but I'll get even with you, right? Resentment, hurt, pain. Okay? So often, divorce situations cause that kind of pain. How do you forgive a spouse that has cheated on you? And is that happening today? All over the place, right? But I guarantee you, if you let that resentment and pain gnaw away at your insides, what's going to happen to your health? It's going to fall apart. Guarantee you. Oh, it'll take a little while, perhaps, to ulcers to eat through your stomach and whatever else. We've got to forgive. Is it easy? Oh, heavens no. Was it easy for Jesus on the cross? Absolutely not. But he knew he had to forgive. I mean, look at Jesus. He's dying for the sin of the world. What if he refused to forgive his tormentors? He would have committed the first sin, right? Right? Now, I mean, it's a moot point because he didn't do that, okay? But it's not easy. It starts with letting go of the rope that's ringing that bell. And that takes time. The bell keeps swinging for a while. You see? But if you intentionally let go of that rope and you tell yourself and remind yourself every time those painful thoughts come up, wait a minute, I'll let go of that rope. They're going to ring a little bit. It's going to swing yet. But eventually, it'll go quiet. Then you've not only forgiven, but you have forgotten. Forgetting takes time. He's got to follow up.
What happens if you forget before you forgive?
Then you're getting older than me. That's the problem. Okay.
I mean, you've blown it off. It's like, you know what, I don't care anymore. You know, it's like, I'm done with this, okay? So you just blow it off, but you've not actually forgiven.
I think, the old saying goes, you hurt me once, shame on me, shame on you. You hurt me twice, shame on me, right? Okay? Forgiving somebody doesn't mean we are condoning their activity. We're not saying what you did to me is okay. It's not okay. Period. I've hurt, I've cried, it's painful. It's not okay. Forgiveness does not say what you did to me is fine. It's not fine. Period. But I can forgive them and eventually forget. Now what you're saying is somebody's done you dirt several times over. And you say, I'm done with you. That's okay. If you let a person run over you and take advantage of you over and over again, who's the dummy? Right? You see? We're not doormats in this society.
Exactly what you just said. Who's the dummy? Okay? If somebody's walking all over me, like you just pointed out, or whatever, or whoever, and you take it, isn't that...
Being Christian.
No, it's just plain being stupid.
If you do something to stop it, then you're wrong.
No, you don't have to do anything to stop it. You can just remove yourself from that situation. In the illustration I used for spousal faithfulness, okay? For a gal or a man to trust that cheating spouse again, is that ever going to happen? Probably not. I am not going to put myself in that same position where I can be taken advantage of. I'm sorry. I ain't going to be that dumb. Have I forgiven you? Absolutely. Have I forgotten that issue? I'm working at it. But to trust you now or think we can go back to the same situation where it was before the unfaithfulness is stupid, folks. It ain't going to happen. The water has gone over the bridge or under the bridge, and that's past. It's done. I can't recreate the past. Yes, Lord, your servant is here listening. Am I answering that?
To an extent, yes.
To a point. Okay, I saw Mark's hand first and then Bob's.
That's where I was going, is forgive, but I'm not trusting that person again. I'm not sticking my neck out again. So I'm not really forgetting.
No, what you're doing is learning from your experiences.
I mean,
You can forget the pain and the resentment that you first felt, but you've learned from that experience and you say, I'm not going to do that again. And there's nothing wrong with learning. I mean, I want to do that every day, don't you? Well, yeah. I've learned from those experiences. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, you cheat me once, guess what? It won't happen again. I won't get myself in that position. Period. Now, does that mean I don't love you? No, I still love you. Does it mean I trust you? Not any further than I can throw you.
Is that a fat joke?
And I can't throw you but 3 inches, so hey. All right, Bob.
What does it actually mean when you say, I forgive you?
What does it mean? What it means essentially is I am no longer going to hold the pain and the hurt that you caused and according to your account. We are saying that that debt that he owes me, I am covering and saying it's paid in full. There is nothing more that I will extract from you in payment for that debt. It's like stamping his MasterCard bill paid in full. That's what you're saying. That's forgiveness. Now, the feelings and the thoughts that follow that takes time to work at. We have to work at it. We got to first let go of the rope. Okay. You're going to continue tolling that bell. You ain't going to change those feelings. You ain't going to get rid of those resentments. You're just tolling the bell. Let go of the rope. The bell will swing a little bit, but eventually it'll go quiet. Okay?
Pastor, do you have to actually go to the person and tell them you forgive them?
That would be preferable, to go to the person and tell that you're forgiven. I had a question last night in our Saturday service. Well, what if I go and tell the person you're forgiven? They go, big deal. Well, first of all, I'm sure the soldiers at Jesus' crucifixion was really taken back when he says, I forgive you. Right? They said, yeah, right, who cares? Right? They didn't care, and yet Jesus forgave them. We have to talk about my responsibility and their responsibility. My responsibility is to not hold that pain and agony against them. I forgive you. That's my responsibility. Whether they accept it, like it, dislike it, whatever, that's their responsibility, right? I'm not in charge of that. So, hey, I've done what I have to do before God. Okay? The rest is their relationship with God. Okay? I saw another hand over here someplace. Chris.
I was just going to say, if you're at that point, the thing that helps too is just say, help me God to forgive them. And if you include that in prayer enough time, it does.
Exactly. Yeah, and every time you think of that pain or that agony that was caused, like the C.S. Lewis story that I shared, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you. He says, I had said that thousands of times. And a lot of times, telling us I forgave that person for that helps us deal with then the thoughts, the feelings, the resentment that eventually will disappear. Okay? They become self-fulfilling prophecies, if you will. Okay? Please.
Who are, if we commit a sin, who are we actually sinning against?
Well, it could possibly be two individuals. First of all, the sin that we commit, we offend God. That's one. And if you slap your wife, that would be the second person. Okay? So that kind of issue, could involve another person. That I'm causing harm or hurt to. So in that case, I've really sinned against two. So I ask God for forgiveness, but He wants me to go and ask forgiveness to the people I've hurt as well. Okay? Now, you have never slapped your wife, I'm sure, so.
No,
I just
knocks me around.
Just knocks you around.
She may have deserved
You got a lot of forgiveness offered up. I'm just teasing. Yeah, right. Anything else? Please, Kathy.
Yeah, real quick here.
No, you don't have to be real quick. I'm paid regardless.
Back in April, I had fallen out with my sister-in-law.
Okay.
I went to her and I told her I forgave her for all the hurtful things and whatever. And at this point, whenever she invites us over for dinner or something, I still feel quite uncomfortable about the whole thing.
Okay.
Now, is the bell still tolling on me, or am I still tolling?
It may be that the bell is still tolling. Only you can answer that. Okay? Or it may be the fact that you are having some, misgivings about getting into another position where your sister-in-law will take advantage of you. Okay? So I don't know which one of that is for you. Only you can answer that. Please. If it is fact, getting myself in a position where she's going to again take advantage of me, then you may have to draw back from that for a while. My brother, David, and my mom have not spoken to each other in probably 15 years. Okay? Breaks my heart. Okay? I really believe my brother has forgiven my mom for what she had done and said and whatever and so on. But he is of the opinion I don't want to reestablish a relationship because I believe she's going to take advantage of me again. So is he right for not talking to her in 15 years? I can't judge that for him. He has to own up to that before God. Okay? But I do respect the fact that he doesn't want to get hurt again. He doesn't want to get taken advantage of again. See? So, there it is. Right? I would like him to grow beyond that and say, you know, like it or not, perfect or imperfect, we only have a mom and a dad. And we only have them for a short period of time. They may never be your best friend, but they're still your mom and dad. And so every time I go home to Michigan, I make it a point to stop and see my brother. I want to keep the communication lines open. Right? You see? I will visit my mom and dad, I will visit my brother, I share with what's happening on either parties with each other, and keep those lines open. Okay? That's what I can do. And I pray that one day that can be at least broached. I don't know if it's going to be solved, but I think it's going to be broached. So you have to decide, is it reluctance to be around my sister-in-law because of possibly taking advantage of again? Or am I still tolling the ball? Now, only you can answer that. Okay. Other comments or questions?
I got one more, Pastor.
Not one more. Hal, go ahead.
One more. Every Sunday, you start out our services with forgiving our sins. Are we forgiven or not forgiven? Or is that play on words?
Don't know exactly what you're asking here.
Okay, you just, every Sunday, you forgive us our sins from the
Correct.
previous week.
Correct.
So we didn't forgive somebody else. So are we forgiven on Sunday for not forgiving that other person? Because you said all of our sins are forgiven.
Right. Provided that you are forgiving toward that other person, yeah, you're forgiven for that. Come Sunday.
No, what he's saying is that me and you had words,
Okay.
and we are angry with each other,
Okay.
and I have not forgiven you for the words.
Okay.
So Sunday when I come to church, I still haven't forgiven you, but you said all my sins are forgiven. But how can the unforgiveness of you be forgiven? Because I'm still holding that. It's a play on words, is what it is.
What we're talking about, what's being forgiven here, is repentant sinfulness. If there is something you have not repented of, or not asked forgiveness for, not sorry for, not interested in getting forgiveness for, I am not saying that's forgiven. Okay?
So it's a reassurance of what we ask for forgiveness is what you're doing on Sunday morning.
Precisely. Precisely. What we're saying on a public scale is announcing that great news that what makes us a unit, a family, a body in Jesus Christ. That's the best news you can hear each and every week. And we need to hear each and every week. Because there's so many voices out there who want to tear us down and tell us just exactly opposite. We need to hear good news. We desperately need to hear good news. But I am not forgiving in that pronunciation. Forgiving something that you are unrepentant of. Okay?
Pretty much where I was.
Precisely. Okay? We go on with the rest of the service, and